So, welcome back. We have been talking about making inferences, and we have observed that basically there are three kinds of inferences that you can make. One is deduction, which is what some people would say logical, that logically it follows uh, this conclusion. One is abduction, which says that okay, typically it follows, or maybe that is a possibility. And the third is induction, which is generating a new generalization essentially. We have seen some small examples of each of them, and we will see more of deduction. Most of the course will be about deduction. So, scientific progress begins with abduction. So, you are looking for causes essentially. Why did the apple fall? This is what Newton might have asked, and then he must came up with the theory of gravity essentially, because gravity caused it. So, gravity causes things to fall down, and by looking at apple fall, one can say that it fell because of gravity. And then of course, you can go ahead and make a generalization and say that gravity is there, and it affects all objects and things like that. So, induction is about informed generalization. So, you might create a hypothesis. For example, Fermat's last theorem. Apparently, Fermat wrote about his uh, theorem in the margins of a book, and then he said that I have found a short proof for this. Unfortunately, that proof was never found, and it took more than a couple of centuries for the rest of the logic community to discover the proof of the Fermat's last theorem. Likewise, there is a Goldbach's conjecture. You should go and look it up. Essentially, it says that any even number can be expressed as a sum of two primes, and there is also a Beal's conjecture, which is a kind of a generalization of Fermat's last theorem. When you say it is a conjecture, we mean that we think that it is true. Maybe it is a process of induction, that you have looked at many examples and you have arrived at a conclusion that it is true, but there is no proof yet essentially. So, it is not yet a theorem. So, we may make these things and they get validated by deduction. So, by making implicit explicit. So, deduction is the process of making whatever is implicit in whatever is known explicit. I think it is already there, it already logically follows from what has been said. Deduction only makes it explicit essentially. Or you can go and validate something by an experimental validation. So, for example, physicists have done experiments which demonstrated that light bends around gravity essentially. So, if there is a massive star or something, then light will bend around that place. But it is only induction that adds new knowledge to the what people know essentially. So, by this we mean not necessarily new factual knowledge. If you see something new, then you are adding something new to your repository of what you know, but induction creates a new type of knowledge essentially, a new kind of generalization. So, as we have been discussing with various examples, the real world is very complex, and especially if there are other agents which are acting in this real world, and an agent may have goals, the agent may have perception of its domain which may be perfect or imperfect. The agent may have access to a set of actions which may be deterministic or which could be stochastic. There may be other events happening which are kind of natural events, you might say, and in all this an agent has to operate. It has to create a picture of what is the world it is operating in, what is the situation, and what are its goals and what it should do, and that sort of stuff. So, humankind is a problem solving species essentially. So, here what I am saying is that problem solving can happen through two ways. One is through first principles, and the other is through some kind of a knowledge based method essentially. And the knowledge basically comes from experience, and memory based reasoning is an area of work in which people try to use experience directly essentially. But you can also learn something from experience, and that is the process of learning or machine learning, as we say. Knowledge also talks about ontology and domain semantics, and that we will spend quite a bit of time on that. And that is also necessary for doing reasoning by first principles. If you are writing a search program to do something, if you are writing a search program to play a game, for example, then you need to work with the domain ontology. So, in this course, we will be covering the knowledge and the ontology kind of thing and the reasoning aspects. I have a companion course which is called AI search methods for problem solving, and in there we look at the algorithms for first principles kind of problem solving. Now, nowadays everybody uses the term artificial intelligence, but most of the time people mean machine learning when they say artificial intelligence, because that is how this whole enterprise has taken off essentially. This has happened because of increasing computing power, increasing access to data, and the machine learning methods which work with data have been quite effective essentially. But I would like to kind of demarcate or chart out what you mean by AI. By AI, we mean symbolic knowledge representation and problem solving. Though it would contain machine learning, because machine learning is in some sense a subfield of AI, but machine learning is concerned with making sense of data. So, you go from data to information. So, people use terms like big data processing, recommender systems. So, if you go to Amazon or something and you are surfing for some product and it keeps suggesting you newer things which are similar. YouTube also does that. So, predictive analytics as to what is it that you are likely to buy, and much of that is driven by their desire to show you advertisements for stuff that you might buy essentially. And of course, advertisers pay Amazon or whoever. The other kind of thing that we do is classification, that you look at some data and you classify it essentially. This is where deep learning has played a big role, and especially with images and languages. So, you can now that programs are capable of labeling images with whatever are the objects inside that image, and deep learning is a buzzword. Now, if you look at the human cognitive architecture, what do human beings do essentially? So, in this diagram that I have drawn, there are three concentric circles. The outermost circle is signal processing essentially. So, that is where you make sense of signals. Our eyes get light rays and we process images, sounds we process, and so on. So, all kinds of signal which we process and produce something else from there. Then there is this neuro-fuzzy reasoning, which is largely made up of neural networks and things like that. So, what they do is they take that digitized signal or discretized signal and do the processing which would do things like recognition, pattern recognition or classification and so on. But what humans do and what kind of distinguishes humans from other people is the inner core of symbolic reasoning, that we represent things as symbols, and we will expound upon this definition as we go along. And we do things like logic and knowledge representation, we talk about ontologies, we talk about semantics or meaning, we talk about natural language understanding. So, understanding is the key phrase there. We talk about memory, we talk about search algorithms, we talk about problem solving, planning and models. We will look at some of those things as we go along. But it has been said by many people that this inner core is what distinguishes humans from other agents. The other agents could be machines, or the other agents could be other animals essentially. This is also something that we would ascribe to saying that we are thinking creatures, that we have this ability to think, which is sometimes synonymous with intelligence. Machine intelligence currently is focused on this neuro fuzzy reasoning part. So, machines are very good at image processing, computer vision, speech recognition, deep neural networks, graphics, machine learning, neural networks, pattern recognition, speech synthesis, robot control and knowledge listening. So, this is an area which lies in between symbols and signals essentially. So, machines have learned to make this connection between signals and symbols. So, mostly it is from left to right on this slide that you are sensing something and you are producing symbols, but it can also be from right hand side going out into the world where you are generating actions or you are generating animation or you are generating speech essentially. So, if you have your favorite social media site, this is what it is doing for a large extent. What it does is that of all the millions of people who use that site, they extract data from that and draw whatever conclusions that they have to do. So, that is also an information processing agent. It is just that the focus is more on neuro fuzzy reasoning here, whereas as I said in the previous slide, humans are known for their symbolic cognitive activity, the ability to make inferences, which is going to be a significant part of that. Image labeling is something which has been very successful in the recent past. So, that if you show an image to one of these systems which has learned through, which is a neural network which has learned, it would generate some labels essentially. So, if you show this image on the left, the system would come up with labels which are symbolic in nature: tree, grass, sky. That is why they are lying in the small circle of symbols that these machines work with. The reason I have drawn this circle as small is because these machines are not able to process these symbols. They are not able to make inferences based on what they see essentially. They are able to see, most definitely they are able to see that there is a tree, there is a grass, there is a sky, but they do not know what is a tree or what is grass essentially. They have learned to identify, to give a name to this image, which is that it has got tree, it has got a tree in it, it has got some grass in it and it has got the sky in it. The same capability is used by governments all over the world nowadays to do facial recognition. So, some governments are of course more oppressive than others, but basically surveillance is a big thing which many governments are doing, and they would like to know as to who is it that they are looking at. Maybe it is in a shopping mall, maybe it is in a railway station or whatever the case may be. And face recognition is basically a task which is like classification, that you know that every person is like has a name. So, it is like a class label. So, you can look at an image and say this person is Smith or this person is Peter and so on. So, there was an article which I read some time ago by Darwish, and it is called Human Level Intelligence or Animal Like Abilities. So, he was kind of trying to analyze as to what is it that machine learning can do essentially. So, one of the things which either he has said or somebody else had said, I am not quite sure, maybe Stuart Russell said it at some time. The statement is that everything that machine learning does now, humans do in the blink of an eye essentially, and we need huge amounts of computing power to do that essentially. Then other people have made observations that eagles and snakes have better vision systems than us. Cats have superior navigation abilities. Dogs recognize and react to human speech. African grey parrots can mimic human speech. So, everything that modern day machine learning systems can do can be done by many of these other life forms. And yet, none of these animals have the cognitive abilities and the intelligence typically attributed to humans essentially. So, this is just a corroboration of the fact that human intelligence is simply beyond pattern recognition, that we do other things which are equally if not more important. So, Rodney Brook, who is a computer scientist at MIT, he has written an article in which he says the same thing in a different way. He says, now suppose a person tells us that a particular photo shows a people playing frisbee in the park. Now, that is something which machines can do. Then Brooks says, we naturally assume that the person can answer questions like what is the shape of the frisbee, roughly how far can a person throw a frisbee, can a person eat a frisbee. So, if I were to show you a picture of a frisbee and if I were to ask you these questions, you will be able to give these answers, assuming you are familiar with a frisbee. Computers that can label images like people playing frisbee in a park have no chance of answering these questions, he says, because simply the only thing they know is to produce that label. They do not have an understanding, they do not have a model of the world, they do not know what is a park, what is a human, what is a frisbee. So, they have no idea of what is a person, that parks are usually outside, that people have ages, that weather is anything more than how it makes a photo look and so on. So, the point we are trying to make is there is more to AI than pattern recognition and machine learning, and that more is the ability to represent knowledge and reason with that, the ability to create models of your environment and imagine how actions would result in, what the actions would result in, and so on. Rodney Brook also quotes Marvin Minsky. He says that Marvin Minsky called words that carry a variety of meanings as suitcase verbs. So, learning is a powerful suitcase word. It can mean to so many different things. It can refer to different kinds of experience. So, he says that when people hear that a machine learning is making great strides in some new domain, they tend to use as a mental model the way in which a person would learn that new domain. However, machine learning is very brittle and it requires a lot of preparation by human researchers and engineers, special purpose coding, special purpose sets of training data, and a custom learning structure for each new problem domain. So, yes, we are making strides in machine learning, but we do not have general learning machines. People are working towards those kind of concepts, but our machine learning algorithms work with for specific problems and they have to be kind of custom made solutions essentially. So, how do we measure intelligence? So, that has been a debate which has been going on for a long time. Ever since the field of artificial intelligence was coined by John McCarthy in the Dartmouth conference, or even before, this Turing came up with this idea that you are going to talk about even earlier, but we will do this in the next session.